You're listening to Raiding the Fringe with Poda, Ostinius, Nepids, and Dr. Lee. From ancient civilizations to the cutting edge of science, from exploring the outer reaches of space to the Atlantean depths, we discuss the topics of the unknown and the possibilities of the bizarre. Are you hungry to expand your horizons? Come get your fill as we raid the fringe.
Well, welcome to our first ever episode where we record ourselves and put it online. Today we are talking about the power of the mind, thought form assumption, making thoughts happen in real life, pulling them down from nowhere, and such like that. As always, we have with me is Poda.
So,
Osinius.
Hello.
Dr. Lee.
That's me.
And myself as Nepids. So, today, guys, we're thinking about talking about thinking. Isn't that right?
Well, it's more than thinking. What do you think of when you think of the mind? Because is it just our intellect, or is there more to it?
I believe there's more to it.
Well, our mind can do many things. It can control our bodies, control the amount of chemicals in our bodies. We have thoughts that, can, once we think them, it can actually be real enough to kill us and things like that, And if you get into the more mystical side, there's people thinking that you can think stuff into reality. So, that gives the mind itself a lot of attributes.
Yeah, the mind's really powerful. When you get into things like the placebo effect, you can be given a sugar pill and you can even be told that it's fake. But if a doctor explains to you why it works, why the fake pill works, it'll still work.
Oh yeah,
absolutely. Obviously not every time. It's not this will cure cancer. But yeah, it works. It's worked for people with like IBS, people with PTSD, anything with initials.
It's worked for people with hypochondria. Oh, every time. It does work to a modicum, but it is a special thing. The power of the mind is amazing. Placebo effect is really, really real. But, to the same effect, hypochondria. Made a joke about it, but to those people, those symptoms that they experience are very real. And to them, they are really sick, and they do require to go to a hospital and stuff.
It has been proven that people who maintain that kind of mental instability, do get sick more often, just for real.
Yeah.
So, Poda, what would you think that it'd have to do about minds or things like that and such?
I think the mind is a very powerful organ that can do all kinds of things in this world based on reality. And our perception of reality, though.
Can you give us an example?
Oh, okay. Well, drugs. I don't have any, but
Drugs would be a chemical reaction to make your mind do something. I'm saying the power of the mind itself to do things by itself.
Oh,
unsolicited help from other objects, outside sources. Your mind itself.
like telekinesis or something.
Or do you mean that is an aspect, yes, but other ideas are like, what they were saying, where if you believe you're sick, then you're sick. People have been so scared of something and it actually stops their heart, and there's also, like I said, other mystical things where you can make things come out of nothing by just thinking it. So things like that, not any kind of outside stimulant to make your mind do something.
No, I think the mind's a very powerful thing and easily corrupted and swayed and can really devastate your life or help yourself to the point of complete lucidity. And in the aspect of, for example, dreams, and if you could, the whole classic, can you die in a dream when you're falling? But you're even if it's 100% real in the dream, your brain still knows that you're dreaming, and it'll try to save itself by sending a current to shock your body to jerk yourself awake before you hit the perception of the pavement, before you realized I have died.
Well, I think that is an involuntary muscle reflex in self-defense of the body, and that's what jerks you awake. You're
Right, but that message is being sent from the brain. It's not an involuntary reflex, because there are certain types of reflexes that bypass your system. It's just straight muscle memory, but during times of when you're in danger of dying or whatever, if it's something like in your dream, then it goes through the proper reflex procedures in your body. So yeah, the message is still coming from your brain, and I think that's a valid point. And even when you're not asleep, I mean, that's a good example while you're sleeping, but even while you're awake, if you think you're in danger, your brain will pump chemicals through your body. It will pump your adrenaline.
I don't know.
Yep.
I think there are points that your body has this personal self-defense mechanism, but it's not, you're not actively thinking. If somebody like throws a fist at you and you throw up your hands to protect your face, granted that's somewhat voluntary, but it's not 100% voluntary.
That is the
when you
perfect-
master martial arts and you see some of these like super martial artists that have that mind over matter kind of capability, they face that without flinching or something like that.
That is a perfect example of the other type of reflexes that the body does have for immediate danger, the flinging your hands up in front of your face or whatever. Your brain bypasses all your systems. Your muscle memory itself has the reflex built in, and because it knows that time is of the essence, it can't relay all the messages as fast as it goes. It's still not fast enough. And so there's a type of reflex that bypasses all of that. But for the example of what's going on when you're dreaming or whatever, that is obviously not a direct physical threat. It's perceived in your mind. Your body can't get that message unless your brain sends it.
Yeah, but I guess it depends on like lucid dreaming and things like that too. Like how much control you have over that, because your body can have that physical response. Just like even though you are in REM sleep and having this amazing dream, people do talk in their sleep. People sleepwalk, and there's
right, and all of that is still controlled by the mind.
Yeah, but it's not conscious control.
No, but it's still control. I mean, if you want to go into unconscious control, what about hypnotism?
That is not conscious control. That is suggested control.
Exactly. That's unconscious control. You put yourself into that slow, impressionable state.
It's someone else's conscious control.
You can program your subconscious to do things. Yeah.
Anyway.
But that's crazy how the mind works, because someone can go in there and reprogram it, and things like that. So how about you guys that, are kind of more along the science side of things of like, so how about the ideas of, okay, so let's say you create a mystical lodge itself, or a group of people that come together to do certain kinds of acts of, we'll call it mysticism, some people call it magic. Okay, so they create their own entity that they want to call. Well, they just made it up. They made up a persona, they made up a what it looks like, what its name is, and everything, and all those people together put that energy into it until that physical form or that entity becomes real. You guys ever heard of that concept? It's called thought form.
I have, and actually I put a great deal of weight into that. I believe wholeheartedly that that kind of mind over matter materialization of something that is already preconcepted amongst a group of individuals, if enough energy is kind of put into it, I totally believe that can manifest wholeheartedly.
I'm of the opposite mind of that. I don't believe that, regardless of the amount of mental energies from the number of people, I do not think it can create a literal manifestation. I do believe that through the power of the mind, humans see what they expect to see. We make patterns where there are none. We see faces where there's just two dots on a line. And so I think through, especially if it's reinforced with the mob mentality. So in this scenario, you've got the group of people coming together to create this entity, and they've obviously created every aspect of it themselves. they could convince themselves that it became real, and they could all agree on the story that it became real. But I also believe that that is psychological trickery, that they knew what to expect. They, most likely in this scenario, they've gone through steps to make their mind impressionable, because you do want to open up to the experience. And those kind of, whether it's a mind-altering chemical or whether it's through a meditation, it makes you more susceptible. And then I believe it's almost teetering on that hypnosis, where the group makes themselves believe that they see it, but I don't believe that an actual entity could ever be created.
Okay,
But
so an example. Well, let me just tell you an example of this, because
I was going to give an example.
So the Necronomicon.
Mm-hmm.
The Necronomicon was created by Lovecraft himself and a bunch of other people creating the Elder Gods and stuff like that. It was created from a book that they said was ancient, but it was a group of people coming together, giving entities these attributes, and then now further down the line, there are people still saying that they summon these things. So that's just an example of what that aspect is. And I can understand where you're coming from when you say you don't agree that, that group of people, but when you get that group of people and then all the other people that believe it, you know what I mean? But I do see what you're saying.
I was going to give a different example, but along the same lines. Like something that we did talk about in a previous episode, Slender Man. That was actually created in 2003 from somebody photoshopping a picture, and it ended up blowing up into its own. And eventually it became a thing where people believed that it was real. People have believed that they have seen it. Like people, like those little girls, they stabbed that other little girl, murdering her for Slender Man because it was so real. And that's where I'm coming from when I say that the power of the mind, although it may be a diseased mind and maybe a misled mind, that doesn't make it any less real that they could manifest it in their own ways.
Well, then you're getting into more of a philosophical definition of reality, then, because.
Well, no, I was.
Well, I'm just saying, like in the instance of the Necronomicon, now we're verging on a religion, sort of, and we're getting into religious debate as to whether or not something can be real because enough people believe in it, and they've done that.
No. The Necronomicon initially, like what Nep is saying, isn't necessarily satanic, and it's not.
I didn't say satanic. I said religious.
No. Okay, let's bring it in a second. What we were getting at is, I wasn't saying that it's a moral thing. I'm just saying that if enough people believe in something, the power of the mind can make it real.
Right.
And the aspect of those things. And I totally understand that you don't believe that in certain aspects.
Well, and that's why I'm saying it's a kind of a philosophical thing on what is real, because yes, in effect, it made it real because these people believed in Slender Man, so something happened related to Slender Man that wouldn't have happened if Slender Man didn't exist or whatever. And so it in a way, it's real because of the reactions of people to it. It was real. But does anyone believe that Slender Man was actually standing there? Does anyone believe actually that the Necronomicon was really an ancient book and H.P. Lovecraft pretended to write?
I believe that people totally
yes,
do.
there are people that believe that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know, I've lost my train of thought. That's crazy.
Okay, well, let me roll it around. What about the people who, like, let's talk about, like, Tibetan or Buddhist monks that have that power to, meditate in frozen mountaintops, like, where they can concentrate enough that, even if you had a thermal camera, you see their body heat rising. People who have that control over, like, that mind over matter thing that makes them, like, it is their mind, but it makes it real, and there is physical evidence of such. Or, like, the guy who can, like, in India, who can become magnetic and, like, stick pots and pans and stuff.
Oh, I've seen that guy too, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what about that?
I guess what I was trying to say earlier was, coming from a point of normalcy or logic, I can understand where you see that, but you can't tell what a person truly believes in their mind is real or not, and how real that is to them too.
Right, and so what I was saying is that's the discrepancy is what is real. Is real an actual physical manifestation, or just enough that they believe that it happened, because to them that is their reality. And as far as the monks go, that's control over your own body, and that is totally physically
I was switching
possible.
the subject, but apparently we're going to go back to this other thing.
But it's like, I could totally believe that I just took a drink out of my bottle. You guys watched on video me not drinking out of my bottle, but it happened and I'm hydrated. Did I make it reality? No. But even if I believe it to my core, to me it was reality. And that's what I believe, even with a group of people getting together and agreeing on what they saw or whatever. By definition, does reality have to do with the physical manifestations of it, or the belief of the physical manifestations
does
of
it
it?
also rely on memory as well? Because memory is very fallible from person to person. Everybody's reality is their own. Like, I'm colorblind, so to me, I could say, hey, that's a gray thing. But even though Lee says that's a gray thing as well, he could see it, and to him it's gray, but to me it's my gray. But that doesn't mean our grays are the same.
Right. Well,
Okay, so
but that's a universal
hold on.
constant. So
Hoda.
we just have to work around that.
I mean, but
Hoda.
it's up to each individual person to
No, I want to drink some
translate
water.
what is reality as they perceive it.
So, okay, let's talk more about these monks that can actually control their body and ideas like that. Or how about telekinesis, or even the idea that what you said, the guy that can make himself magnetic. Couldn't he move stuff with his mind, making himself magnetic that way?
Through the power of,
Like ball
of
bearing?
meditation and control over your mind, a lot of our body's ability, like blinking, for instance, it's automatic. You don't have to think about it, but you can do it on purpose as well. And a lot of our body functions,
You just made me want to.
unless you're French Stewart, and then you're stuck in one way. But you can. But a lot of our body functions are controllable from our conscious mind. We just don't have the discipline and clarity to really center on that, and that's why a lot of the mystics will focus on a meditation where you can clear and sort your mind out so you can have better control over your body, and you can slow your heartbeat, raise your body temperature. There's a guy that can hold his breath for like 9.5 minutes, and it's just remarkable. And it's knowing and centering yourself into your mind and just knowing yourself better, I think, because our mind is so much, it's not 10% of your brain like the myth was for a long time. It's most of your brain. But there was a guru, and they all have weird names, so I can't remember his name. But he was saying that intellect, which is what most people focus on, is only one aspect of the mind.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
And the awareness of self is what that intellect wraps itself around. And without that center, intellect is like a scalpel, and you can dissect and learn things. But without being able to wield that scalpel, you're just going to wind up cutting yourself. And if you have your self-identity and you know what basis to put this intellect around, then with a steady hand and a sure aim, you can control better your environment and yourself in that environment.
Mandeep Chopra?
No, but I know him.
But yes, that inner reflection helps you focus. I watched a thing of like Shaolin monks and like all the training they go through. Now, granted, they go through a lot of arduous physical training, but the mental meditation and everything, and seeing them get in the ring with somebody else who is a trained martial artist, like even an MMA fighter, and just seeing this Shaolin monk who's lived in the mountains for the last 20 years just whoop his ass without even really thinking of it is pretty amazing.
Yeah, the first Buddhist, Siddhartha, the one who he went up to the temple. Well, he wasn't the very first Buddhist, but he's the one that they based Buddha off of, and he went up to the monks in the towers and they wouldn't let him in. And they wouldn't let him in, they wouldn't let him in. And so he meditated and he sat in front of the wall for 30 days without eating or drinking to prove that he was worthy and he had something to add to this.
Gandhi did some shit like that too.
And it's, you know, that kind of mind over matter that expanded Buddhism as it was to include the mind and the love of all life form and everything like that. So that was one example of someone actually recorded in history doing amazing feats just from controlling his mind.
Well, coming back to that kind of ties in because we were mentioning Buddha and stuff. That does bring it to religion to a point. And like we also said on an earlier episode, that's kind of how I feel. I'm not being like super religious or anything, but like there have been people who have like big groups of people who have prayed for somebody. And even though like the doctors say, oh, he's not going to live a week, and then he lives an extra 10 years, you know, you can't deny that during that point, there were people that prayed for him. I feel like that is like a group meditation kind of thing, like a mind over matter. Everybody is focusing their energy on this one focal point, and just the power of their minds combined for a common purpose can manifest in a realistic atmosphere. You know what I mean? Like, you know, for Buddhists, it's meditation, and they can do that mind over matter. For some people, it is their Wiccan things of lighting candles and using a Ouija board or something. But for like other people, like, you know, that's what gets them in that frame of mind that they are able to influence the physical world.
Once it becomes external, that's where I become skeptical.
Well, here's something internal, sticking with the body and taking religious aspects and spiritual belief out of the equation. Just the physical discipline and control that they have, that you already agree they can control their body. I mean, it's a system, and once you understand the controls better, you can control it. Like, you hear stories of like they could get cut but choose not to bleed whatsoever. Okay, I understand that because I've seen that happen. But the one where they are going to choose not to get cut and they focus their chi or their kai or whatever on that focal point of their arm, and then someone swings a full sword at it with the swipe, but there is no actual cut. Maybe some hairs have been cut, but the skin has no blemishes on it. That's what I find interesting. Where does the power of the mind versus the spiritual belief, I guess I'm back to it, spiritual belief of chi or kai, is that energy actually already produced by the body because of the focusing, and that's the electrical, like what would be considered the aura, our
magnetic,
our energy field that's around us, that would like planetary bodies have, or like the sun has and stuff like that. Being able to, with your mind, not only control the obvious, the physical and the blood vessels, but being able to redirect that energy flow itself, our power field, basically, that we're putting off because we have electricity produced and flowing through us.
I'd still consider that internal, because that is something that our body emits, and you should be able to have control over it to one degree or another. Anyway,
I would argue that point. Okay, so some of the monks, you know, things like that. Yeah, they meditate, and yeah, they can do things that other humans can't, but they also do a lot of hardcore like training, like bashing themselves on things and like being rough and tumble. And so there is a level of building up your skin tissue in certain areas. You know, none of them just walks out of the forest and somebody runs up with them with a sword and you know what I mean? Like, it's demonstrations where spear points are put on certain places, and I believe that they over time have built their muscles up and their skin, you know, to a callous point where, you know, that I believe that's I'm not saying it's not mental, but it is, you know, a great deal physical too. They train all their lives to be able to do that.
I agree.
So that would be put under external stimuli, basically.
Yeah. I would not put that. I would not equate that I mean, there's a level of meditation that lets you hold your breath for, 10 minutes, or, lets you do these other things like regulate your body temperature, or be able to, like, Mr. Miyagi massage somebody to be better. I mean, that's more mental, but I believe there's enough external stimuli to disqualify that kind of stuff, because it is always prepared. There's a lot of preparation that goes into that.
But it's not always. I mean, that's the common example, and and definitely physical training is going to make it easier, make it able to do that. But under certain controlled circumstances, you can do it without the training. A mother who has not been lifting weights her whole life can lift a school bus because her baby's trapped underneath it. And that adrenaline is not external. That response is internal. It is controlled by the brain. And it is given someone temporary superpowers, whether or not she has to pay for it later because her muscles will be sore from not really being able to do it.
Regulates the adrenaline, though.
But it's still, that's one of those things that's not premeditated, but it's still the power of the mind. That is something that you would not normally be able to do at all unless your brain says, time to do it. Time to step up.
I agree. That's my baby syndrome. Now my baby.
Mother and daughter moving. Just put her underneath there. My baby.
You want this bookcase moved? Go ahead and lay down, kiddo. Oh no, my baby.
We could talk more like the ideas of how, it's individualized with, perception, because I mean, that will come into a lot with what your brain is actually doing or what your mind is doing, because perception itself honestly dictates what your mind believes. But how powerful it is, like, you can, under right circumstances and things like that, you can literally, like with what he said, hypnotism, basically reprogram someone's mind in a certain way that it's real to them, to the point where you can change them completely. You know what I mean? And that's kind of interesting to think that all you got to do is just do certain aspects, certain things, certain trauma, and our brain tries to heal itself, but it'll almost reprogram itself to, to do things, the way it wants to do it now.
I feel, okay, so if we're talking like mind over matter, the power of the mind, I do believe in energy fields and what have you, and what is the thing that causes our energy. I mean, really, the brain has the most electro activity or whatever out of our entire body. We can't see Wi-Fi, we can't see radio waves, and yet we've accepted those for so many years at this point. Depending on the will of a person or their ability or concentration enough to focus those waves to impact the natural world, just because we can't see it, I believe that it's totally there. Like there are waves. I mean, you could feel the aura of a person. If somebody's up to no good, I mean, if you're kind of aware of it, I mean, granted, people are oblivious, but to a certain point, there are empaths or whatever, and I believe that that's what they're picking up on, like the waves that our brains emit, and I totally believe that it can impact the physical world.
I believe that that's another example of power of the mind instead of auras or whatever. I think that even though you're looking at a person, that they're up to no good or whatever because of the micro signals that they're sending through body language, through the twitch of the eyelash or something. And it's one of those things where some people are more attuned to what they can see and read more into it. And it gives you a fuller programming without being aware of what you're doing. Like walking, you don't say, okay, left foot, okay, right foot, okay, left foot. You say walk, and when you're staring at a person and you're assessing them, you're not going over each of those things in your mind, consciously. But I believe that the whole mysticism with the auras and everything comes from being able to read a person on that microscopic level and just
But
not being
there's-
able to explain it.
But there's the other point of that feeling. I know someone is watching me, and you turn to the exact place that you see somebody watching you.
And 60% of the time, there's no one there.
Not that you could see.
So I'm just saying. So that feeling that you know someone's watching you, it is just a feeling, and it's not knowledge.
I don't know. I would care to disagree.
Okay, how about this? Hey, Poda, can you give us an example where you've had some kind of mind over, power of the mind thing happen in your life?
I'm sure there's a lot of examples. My recall,
Would you
the
be
power
able
of
to
my
give
mind's
us some?
memory sucks. Well, let's see if I can get it going. On what they were just talking about with the aura versus actual feelings and
No, I was just
Stuff
wanting to
like
know. Yeah, an example like that you yourself went through.
well, that's why I'm trying to get my brain going on that path, going off of what they said, because you have those beliefs of scientific versus spiritual, but it's technically all the same, just different terminology, and you can only prove certain aspects of it. Because with the aura thing, some people will say, someone's about to come to my house, and they're not expecting anybody or anything like that. And then you'll be sitting there, like I've seen that happen. Someone's sitting there, hanging out with someone, quiet, nothing going on, home joint, whatever. No music's playing or anything. It's like someone's about to knock on the door in about 20 minutes. Now, when you don't personally have the experience, it's hard to tell if that person was full of shit. Like they just called someone or texted and they were about to come over and they just try to mess with everybody in there. But I have had experiences where I'm expecting no one, no phone calls been made. And you can, without hearing, smelling, or seeing, can be aware of someone's presence coming towards you with no indicators of your five senses. Because for example, in the woods or in the city, it's very useful to have that, because you can't always see, smell, touch, or taste or anything like that. If I'm sitting outside, I can tell someone's coming towards me before I ever hear, see, or smell them. Well, more so in the past.
I think
but
that's what you were getting at.
And that's
It
my
consciously-
argument, is consciously
Consciously.
you don't notice it at all. But
Subconsciously,
subconsciously, like,
you heard a rustle, you
felt
caught
the-
a whiff on the wind.
felt a difference of air pressure on one side of you. And no, you're not going to say, oh, I'm so sensitive, I could tell the air pressure changing. But you can. And your body knows how to react to that and how to suggest things to you based on that. We're rarely in a position where that is a life-threatening situation where a change of air pressure will make you die or anything. So it's not going to alert you on your top level, on your physical interaction with the world. But it is enough that it knows that it's something it can perceive, and it can hint you that way without you even realizing it.
Well, okay, I see what you're saying now. And that is a different power of the mind, which makes it really amazing. I saw a thing that it was like a neural scan of like neurons firing, and it was extremely close to like a picture of a nebulous cloud. That our brains are somewhat wired as the universe was designed, if you want to say that. It was really amazing to me.
When you break it down to not just the mind but the brain itself, and you see all of the mappings of the circuitry within it.
Oh, the interconnections,
It is a fractal. We are a tiny replica of a larger network until you can expand it to the universe. And there are some people that believe it is that very connection that lets us attune with the universe and pick up on the extra things like seeing into the future and predicting when a man's coming over in 20 minutes or whatever. They believe that it's that fractal connection we have with the universe itself that makes us potentially aware of the other aspects of the universe. We're all connected.
So, How about you, Osinius? Do you have any other than someone's coming, or something wicked this way comes? I mean, do you have something that's, other than that?
Story.
Well, as you know, there was dabblage in, spiritual arts or whatever you want to call it. And I totally feel that I had imprinted certain things happened that I cannot refute that I wanted to happen. And, like I'm saying with like the prayer and like all that stuff, it depends on how you get yourself in that mind frame. And I have been in that mind frame a few times, and things that I wished or whatever to come true, things happen the way I wanted them to. Now, call me lucky, call me kooky.
That was the very longest explanation that didn't explain a damn thing I've ever heard. You had a whole lot of things were said and whatevers, but I didn't hear an example, and I have no idea what you're talking about.
All right, okay, so call me a douchey emo teenager.
Douchey emo teenager.
I cast love spells and stuff, and it came to fruition. Now, maybe it backfired on me, but there's always a warning that comes with certain things that you do. I accept my fate. I can't refute some of the supernatural things that I've seen. Is what I'm saying. My direct example is casting love spells, and guess what? I got some poon. if that's what you want to hear, Lee.
Now, just
I'm not going to give you a recap of my Saturday night.
What's funny is I know exactly who.
Yeah,
and
you know
when
exactly
and
what I'm
where.
talking about. But it was all other things, like Rowan. He was, at the very beginning and throughout a lot of it, a very sketchy pregnancy and birth. And I did rituals, and I cast spells and stuff to do stuff with that. And I did it for a certain time frame, like 3 years. So when I was in Myrtle Beach, I kept this altar for this 3 years, and I had to do a closeout thing. And I didn't do it on the exact date in which I had initially done the spell thing. And then Rowan started having these terrible nightmares and coming to me and talking about this ghost family. But he was 3 years old. That's the best that he could tell me. And after I dispatched of the remnants of what I had set out to do, after that, everything was fine. And there's stuff. It's not for me to tell you.
okay. Don't take this as a direct refutation, but I do also want to say what I was saying earlier about another power of the human mind is the fact that we find patterns where we want to see them. So, say for instance, you are of this nondescript religion. You're praying to the flying spaghetti monster, whatever. For this outcome, either it happens and then your prayer was answered, or it doesn't happen and it was his decision to say no. That is your reality. It was reacted to by this person that you prayed to, this entity that you prayed to, whether it was or not. Just like if you see 12 black spots on a paper and you say that is a Dalmatian, but it's not a Dalmatian. It's just spots in the shape of a Dalmatian, and your brain put it together. That doesn't, and that could have been what this artist did on that picture, but it's not there, and your brain sees it there, and so it's there. And
that's the power of the mind, Lee.
That's the power of the mind. And so, where I'm saying it's like
my reality is different than yours.
Right. Whether or not that entity was really there and really did answer that prayer or, respond to the altar or whatever, it's possible that that's true. But it's also possible that it's not, and our superior intellect had put the pattern in where it needs. Like, you read that horoscope, it fit to you, because your brain goes through everything that happened to you that day and say, okay, that could have meant this, and that could have meant that. And you're putting the puzzle pieces together from different puzzles.
Well, I think that's where memory
Okay, Lee.
fallibility comes in too.
So other than what Poda said and other than casting spells, have you ever had any,
Clearly not.
I have.
power of mind?
But like I said, when it's external, I get skeptical. But when it's internal, I believe that you have that. And it's a lot of psychology when you break it down too much. But
You don't have to explain it that way. Just tell us.
holding my breath underwater.
Okay.
In high school, you get to swim in the pool for gym class or whatever. And we were trying to keep records of who could hold their breath the longest. And I suppose that's not really safe, but I mean,
That's a terrible idea.
As
Hey,
long
we're a
as you're
bunch of
not-
kids
as long as you're not-
unsupervised. Let's dunk each other underwater.
Yeah, as long as you're not holding each other down underwater. It's like, no, he can make it.
so and I'm a very competitive person. So my record was about 40 seconds, 45 seconds, something like that. But this other kid was constantly getting closer to a minute. And I was frustrated. It's like, I should be able to do this. And I've been training all school year and I can't do any better. And then I learned a trick and I meditated underneath the water. And in my head, I sang a song that I really liked. And I held my breath to see how long through that song I could get, not just for setting a record for holding your breath, but how long through that song I could get. And I held my breath for 1.5 minutes before I came up, doubling my previous record time, all because through the power of my mind, I looked at a different angle, a different way of accomplishing what I was trying to accomplish. And so instead of being, counting seconds and then realizing, oh my God, I can't breathe, and then you start panicking and you have to get up and get your air, I distracted myself. It's a form of meditation, but it was also a distraction where I knew how to. I didn't know it would work, but I thought of a way to use my mind to overcome that barrier, and I found direct success.
Direct.
Direct success.
It was Bender. Song that my high school band that we wrote, and so it had like connection to me, and so I think that's why it was more meditation.
It's a good song.
That's pretty cool.
What about you, Net?
I don't have anything that's different from you guys. I mean, you know what I mean?
Love spells, holding your breath, hearing things coming.
Yep, done every
Cast a
single one
love
of those
spell,
things.
held your breath until it worked.
I wouldn't say I casted love spells. No.
Well,
I mean, I did.
other.
I did, but I did other things. Like if you want to talk about that aspect, like the thought form assumption, exactly what I was explaining to you before. You get a group of people, you basically lay out the parameters, you create something, or now what I believe, you create a shell for something to live in. And usually it acts within those parameters unless you feed it differently. You feed it, take care of it, nurture it, it goes out and does what you want. Then eventually you do have to kill it. And everybody in the room heard the thing scream. And that, again, you yourself will say that's just us, you know what I mean, hearing what we want to hear. I personally didn't want to hear that scream. I'm just going to let you know that right now. I did not want to hear it.
Wet.
But I understand where you would come from saying that it's the same aspect, you know what I mean? But there have been people there, and I know at least one of you can attest to hearing that scream.
There's also, I mean, I'm not countering that. That's
No. I was just saying.
But what I do also want to
Yeah.
say is that the subconscious mind and the conscious mind can want two different things. And that a big example of that is where dreams come in, and where sometimes you don't have control over your dreams, or you think, I would never do that in real life. But in that dream, you have that affair. You beat up that person that you actually like in real life. You have the molasses fist going on. It's because your subconscious mind needs or wants certain things to happen, even if it's contrary to what your conscious mind wants.
Yeah, but when it's the same thing, same tone, same everything for three people, that's where I get like, okay, you know what I mean? Like an audible scream is kind of like, when there's nothing else in the house to scream. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of there.
And that's one of those.
It wasn't like I just heard it.
That's one of those instances
You know what
where
I
it
mean?
might not just be the power of the mind. It might have been a physical manifestation. And there's.
That's true enough.
I've got nothing on that. I'm just saying that it is possible, especially with the secondhand witness effect, another power of the mind.
Well, the power of influence.
Yeah, where two people who see something completely different from each
Actually,
other can actually have the exact same testimony because they heard the other person's testimony, and their brain
and it
automatically.
That's the fallible of memory. That's what. Like, I hate that. Like, that's why any sort of investigation when it comes to a group matter, like somebody in a park walks up to someone else and says, "Hey, you bastard," and they pull a gun out of their trench coat and shoot the guy and walk away. Did you see what happened? Oh, yeah. They asked them in a group, and this one guy says, "Oh, yeah, I saw the guy. He was wearing a red hat and blah, 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 blah." No, he was wearing a bowler and a trench coat.
Yeah, no, I saw the guy. He pulled the knife out of his blazer.
Yeah, and stabbed him. Well, this was clearly a shooting thing.
And it happens so like fluidly and solidly that these people with completely different stories from what actually happened, even though they were all there, each one of them is convinced that the other guy must be crazy. I saw the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so it's a fallibility of memory, but more than that, it's also the ability for your mind to change due to impressions.
Yeah, again, it's susceptibility to being influenced, just like the hypnotism thing. You know what I mean? Like, some people it really doesn't kind of work on. And I think it's their willpower or something. It all relies down to the power of the brain.
The power of the brain. Today's episode, thank you for joining us at Rating the Fringe on our new format, the YouTubes.
Yes.
We'll try to do things like this. We have some ideas in the planning stage, beta testing some things, doing some things.
Yeah, you might see some weird different stuff, but we'll try some things out.
But again, thank you for joining us on our new format, and episodes will come out when they come out. Thank you.
Leave us some feedback.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Talk to us.
Guys are starving for feedback. They are hungry for feedback. Hungry for the.
I'm a hungry
thirsty.
hippo.
They're thirsty.
I'm a moderately hungry hippo.
Feedback.